What's up, everybody? I'm Brett Mix here for Wrestling Nostalgia 101. Talking today about the Mount Rushmore of WWE. So going back just to the WWF, that's it. And in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to go over the four guys that I think are the most responsible for WWE's popularity. The four guys that I don't think anybody could take off the pedestal that I'm going to place them on as the Mount Rushmore of WWE. So for this, you obviously need to cut your list down to four people, and I want to see in the comment section below your guys' four names after I'm done mine. I will go on a little bit of a brief explanation of each of my picks, and I'll also talk about some guys at the end that I didn't include and why that is. So hit like and subscribe if you like videos like this. I do the Monday Night War videos, and I'm having a blast doing that. So if that's your cup of tea, please hit subscribe. It would help me out a lot. I'm trying to get this channel big. I'm enjoying doing all the videos, and this is a topic I really wanted to touch on because the term legend in WWE gets tossed around so much these days, just like the term buried, right? It's a term you just wish wasn't said that much because it's often used in areas it shouldn't belong in. And as far as legend goes, all these four guys rightfully fit the bill, and you'll see why. Just by saying their names, if you're a wrestling fan, you'll obviously understand why, but I'm going to explain it even further. So, again, this is just WWE, so that means Ric Flair, I'm sorry, doesn't pass the grade. My criteria expands here for just the WWF, WWE. Longevity, cultural impact, drawing, overall importance, popularity, charisma, and, of course, overall legendary status. I have to be fair and look at my time before this Mount Rushmore and include Bruno Sammartino. I'm in my late 30s, but he's got to be my first choice, and I'll explain my picks, as I said. It's not an easy choice to put Bruno over some other guy that I'll explain at the end why I wanted to include him, but I can't. First, Bruno was the WWF before Hogan, okay? And he was the WWF before even the WWF was the WWF. He was in the WWF. That goes back a long way. He dominated for a few decades, holds the longest WWE World Title reign ever, 2,803 days long, and you have to think no one will ever touch that. It's kind of like Wayne Gretzky's NHL point total. No one will touch that. Notice I say points and not goals for all you hockey fans out there. Alex Ovechkin, the Russian, might pass Gretzky in goals this season or next for NHL, but not points because that record is just too high, and that's what Bruno Sammartino does for the world title in wrestling. I think no one can ever overtake that as far as days gone by. It's just I can't see somebody in today's wrestling holding the title that long and the fans not getting beyond sick of it. We saw Roman hold it for a few years, and a lot of people got sick of it, even if Roman's more popular now for it. Selling out MSG back in the day was a lot harder than that of today or even 10 years, 20, 30 years ago. Think of ways one can promote an event in this day and age. Isn't even close to as hard as it was back then when there was posters, maybe a radio spot or an odd TV spot, newspapers, stuff like that. Word gets around a little bit easier these days in the social media world. But if there is a legend and there's a guy that you got to say, okay, well, this guy's a legend, Bruno Sammartino fits the bill, and to me, he's got to be the first guy on my list. Next up, obviously, this guy should be on everybody's list too. Obviously, Hulk Hogan is and always will be the number one name when it comes to the biggest name in wrestling. Watch my words, though. Biggest name in wrestling. I'm going to try not to contradict myself when I explain these four guys, but each of them will get a little bit of attributes, a lot of praise, but I'm going to try not to contradict myself. So watch the words carefully. Biggest name in wrestling, whether it was a babyface in the 80s and 90s, or whether he was turning heel or drawing a lot of money, either as Hulk Hogan or Hollywood Hogan, he made wrestling. He popped two boom periods. He took it further than Bruno could and broke wrestling into the pop culture landscape. The name Hulk Hogan around the time of the NWO was bigger than pro wrestling. He might have said that for heel heat, but it was bigger than wrestling. Hulk Hogan made wrestling. You see signs that say that all the time. He was second to Bruno in longest title reign. His charisma and promo skills were godly in the 1980s and were again impressive in the late 90s as the ultimate heel, the leader of the NWO. I'm not including WCW in this, but it just shows how Hulk Hogan, it was very he had a lot of contrast in his personality. He could do it on both ends of the spectrum, and that just shows how diverse he was and how he wasn't just a one-trick leg drop pony. Hulk Hogan made wrestling, and you can't deny that. So I think Hulk Hogan on the Mount Rushmore for WWF is a given. However, in saying that, then this next guy is a guy you'll probably see on more Mount Rushmores than anyone else. I looked at a lot of Mount Rushmores before making this video, and if Bruno made the WWF and Hogan expanded on it by being its biggest name, getting into pop culture, then this is the man that saved it from bankruptcy and maybe even going out of business. He didn't just save it, he was called the biggest draw in the history of all time by the promoter himself, Vince McMahon. And I'm talking about Stone Cold Steve Austin here. Stone Cold Steve Austin, the biggest merchandise seller ever. He could do it all. He could talk, he could wrestle, he could brawl, he could do it all. And oh, how the money just kept coming in, how those arenas kept filling out, how the shirts just kept having a sea of Austin 316 everywhere. When his glass hit, the pops were the loudest pops you'd ever hear. Stone Cold, seeing him in person from the years 1997 to 2001 is like seeing a rock star up close. His contribution to wrestling is perhaps more respected than anyone because he came up the hard way, and he also respected the fans and loved the business as a whole. He was a wrestling fan first. Unlike, I'm not going to say unlike Bruno or Hogan, but like this guy's passion for wrestling, or The Rock or other guys like that, his passion for wrestling was up there. And speaking of The Rock, remember how I said Hogan was the biggest name in wrestling? Well, only The Rock can challenge that celebrity status and overtake it, as by far the most famous name to ever come out of wrestling for the general public. No one should ever, no, I'm not saying he's the biggest name in wrestling, that's Hogan, but the biggest name to come out of wrestling into the celebrity status is The Rock. No one should ever take the spot either from The Rock. I can't see, after all The Rock's done, he's the top guy in Hollywood for almost a decade. He's been one of the top guys, if not the top guy. I just can't see a wrestler in this day and age ever coming in now and taking over The Rock's popularity. It's hilarious. I had to laugh thinking about it. I just can't see it ever happening. Austin's popularity, when he saved the business, helped expand wrestling into the pop culture again, and The Rock saw this opportunity, and then he exploded into popularity because Austin opened the door for him. And The Rock obviously just delivered and expanded on that and became even more popular than Austin in times. In some arenas, some months, some years, he became a little bit more popular than Austin at times. But as far as drawing popularity goes, Rock didn't do it as many times as Austin. So each guy has a little bit something over the other, but each of these four names all have similar comparisons in legendary status. And that's why I think that these four guys are the right picks to put on a Mount Rushmore of pro wrestling. As you can see, each of these four guys, you could argue, was the most important into the history of WWE as a whole. Notables left off, of course, The Undertaker is one I feel I could have had on here. He did it all. He's a staple for the WWE. It really hurts to not put The Undertaker. He's the one guy I'd put on here if there was a fifth name. So I get comments. How could you not have The Undertaker on here? Totally get that. But and my answer is simple. There's only four people that can be up there. People will argue, Andre the Giant, Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, maybe even Triple H or Macho Man, maybe John Cena or Roman Reigns. Those last two, while they have longevity and are obviously, they get a bias with today's wrestling fan, I think it's just too new and it's too recent, and I don't think they hold the same drawing power as the other names on my Mount Rushmore. But when it comes to the final four, I can't look past these four guys. So, like I said before, in the comments section below, list your top four for WWF. If you don't want to do it for WWF, let me know it's for wrestling as a whole. If you list four guys and it's just pro wrestling, say it's for pro wrestling. But if you do it just for the WWE, just say your four names, and then I'll understand it's for WWE. I'm really fascinated by other people's selections. I like to see how other people think. And how it compares to my opinion, because in my opinion, I think I picked the right four guys here. Vince McMahon obviously is a guy, his name is tarnished right now, but he's obviously made wrestling into what it is too, and I can't take that away from him either. Although I don't agree or respect the man in any way, shape, or form. Anyways, hit like and subscribe if you enjoy these videos. I had fun doing this one, and follow the Monday Night Wars on this channel. I'm Brett Mix, and I'm out. Thanks for watching.